I am Salahuddin. Salahuddin.
Some people see the Crusades as a noble quest for religious salvation, but what if there was another side to the story? One filled with invasion, betrayal, and fierce resistance. Why did Muslim leaders unite against an overwhelming force? And how did they manage to push back against one of history's most famous military campaigns? The true story of the Crusades might not be what you think. This is the Crusades from the Muslim perspective. It all started in 1096. The First Crusade kicked off, and the Muslim world had no idea what was coming. These weren't just your average invaders, they were a massive, organized army of Christian knights marching from Europe, determined to reach the Holy Land. At first, many Muslims saw the Crusaders as just another group of foreign troublemakers. After all, they had dealt with plenty of raiders before, but everything changed in 1099 when the Crusaders captured Jerusalem. The level of violence shocked the Muslim world to its core. What was supposed to be a holy war to reclaim sacred land turned into a horrific bloodbath. Thousands of Muslims and Jews were slaughtered, and Jerusalem, home to some of Islam's holiest sites, was left in ruins. This wasn't just a military loss, it was a spiritual disaster. And yet, the Muslim world was deeply divided at the time. Factions like the Abbasids in Baghdad and the Fatimids in Egypt were too busy with their own power struggles to fully grasp the threat. But they didn't realize this was just the beginning. At first, the Muslim world didn't know what to make of the Crusaders. Who were these strange warriors? Why were they so brutal? The early response was confused and disorganized. But as the 12th century rolled in, things started to change. That's when the idea of jihad, not the spiritual kind, but a call to arms, began to take shape. Muslims realized this wasn't just another invasion. It was a religious battle to defend Islam's sacred lands. One of the first leaders to step up was Imad ad-Din Zengi, a powerful warlord with big ambitions. In 1144, Zengi shook the Crusaders to their core by capturing the county of Edessa, delivering the first major Muslim victory. This triumph lit a spark across the Muslim world. Finally, there was proof the Crusaders weren't invincible. Zengi's win showed that victory was possible and paved the way for stronger Muslim resistance. But Zengi's success was only the start. His son, Nur ad-Din, would push things even further. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Nur ad-Din wasn't just a skilled military leader, he was a man with a mission. What made him different? His vision of unity. He knew the only way to stand up to the Crusaders was to bring the Muslim world together. From his power base in Aleppo and Damascus, Nur ad-Din combined military might with sharp political strategy, pulling in allies from all over the region. To him, this wasn't just another war, it was a holy battle, a jihad to defend Islam's most sacred lands. But the real change? That came with one of his most loyal commanders, a man who would go on to become a legend, Saladin. Born in 1137 in what is now Iraq, Saladin started his rise under Nur ad-Din's command. Even his Crusader enemies respected Saladin as a wise and honorable leader. He wasn't just a brilliant military tactician, he was deeply religious and driven by one goal: reclaiming Jerusalem for Islam. And when his moment came, Saladin didn't disappoint. In 1187, at the Battle of Hattin, Saladin's forces crushed the Crusaders. It was a complete mess. Thousands of Crusaders were killed or captured, and the road to Jerusalem lay wide open. But what happened next truly set Saladin apart. Unlike the Crusaders, who had mercilessly massacred Jerusalem's inhabitants back in 1099, Saladin chose mercy. He allowed the city's Christians and Jews to leave unharmed, a decision that was as shocking as it was significant. Saladin's victory wasn't just a military win, it was a powerful symbol. The Muslim world had reclaimed Jerusalem, and with it, they'd proven the Crusaders could be defeated. Of course, the Christians weren't going to give up Jerusalem without a fight. That's when Richard the Lionheart, one of England's most legendary kings, stepped onto the scene, leading the Third Crusade with one mission in mind: taking back the Holy City. What followed wasn't just a battle for territory, it was a face-off between two of history's greatest military minds. But here's where it gets interesting. From the Muslim perspective, the Third Crusade wasn't just about swords and shields. It was a time of tension, but also respect. Yes, Saladin and Richard were enemies, but they had an unusual admiration for each other's courage and honor. Think about this. During the campaign, Richard fell seriously ill, and Saladin, instead of exploiting the moment, sent him medical supplies. Even with this mutual respect, the battles were intense. The siege of Acre, for instance, was a gruesome, drawn-out conflict, with both sides enduring heavy losses. But here's the thing, after all the bloodshed, neither Saladin nor Richard could claim total victory. After years of fighting, they decided to call a truce in 1192. Jerusalem would remain under Muslim control, but Christian pilgrims would be allowed to visit the city. For the Muslim world, this was a huge win. Saladin had defended the Holy Land, and while the Crusaders may have won some battles, they hadn't achieved their ultimate goal of reclaiming Jerusalem. You might think the story ends with Richard and Saladin, but the Crusades didn't stop there. Far from it. In fact, the Crusaders kept coming back for more, wave after wave. But here's the thing. From the Muslim perspective, these later Crusades weren't as dramatic as the earlier ones, but they were still crucial. The Crusader forces were weaker and less organized each time, yet they persisted. So, what happened next? By the late 13th century, the tides had fully turned. The Muslim forces had managed to push the remaining Crusaders out of their strongholds. The final nail in the Crusaders' coffin? The fall of Acre in 1291. Acre was the Crusaders' last major base in the Holy Land, and once it fell, that was it. The Crusades, at least in the Middle East, were over. But from a Muslim perspective, the Crusades were more than just battles. They were a testament to resilience. It was a long, hard-fought defense of their lands, their people, and their faith. The Crusaders, once feared as an unstoppable force, were eventually defeated. Yet, while the battles may have ended, the scars of the Crusades would linger in the Muslim world for centuries to come. So, what do the Crusades mean to the Muslim world today? For many, they're remembered as a time when foreign invaders tried to take what they saw as rightfully theirs. The Crusaders were seen as aggressors, driven by religious fanaticism, who sought to impose their beliefs on lands that were sacred to Muslims. But the Crusades were also a time of heroes, like Saladin, who became symbols of Muslim strength, justice, and mercy. Saladin's legacy, in particular, still resonates in the Middle East. His name is remembered with pride, not just for his military victories, but for his sense of fairness and his ability to unite the Muslim world in a time of crisis. The Crusades also had a lasting impact on how Muslims viewed the West. The bitterness and hostility sparked by these wars fueled centuries of tension between the Muslim world and Europe. But it wasn't all bad. One of the unintended consequences of the Crusades was an increase in trade and cultural exchange between the two regions. As Crusaders and Muslims interacted, ideas and innovations flowed between East and West. European Crusaders were introduced to advanced Muslim knowledge in areas like medicine, mathematics, and architecture, knowledge that would later help fuel the Renaissance. In the end, the Crusades were a clash of civilizations. From the Muslim perspective, they were a time of invasion, resistance, and eventually, victory. But they were also a time of great loss and suffering. The Crusades changed the course of history for both the Muslim world and Europe, leaving behind a complicated and often painful legacy. But as with all of history, there's more than one side to every story. And by understanding the Crusades from the Muslim perspective, we gain a deeper, more complete picture of this pivotal chapter in world history. If you found this journey through the past interesting, be sure to check out more of our videos on history from different perspectives. There's always more to the story than meets the eye.